exciting day today, folks. Today is the day that we start our very first knitting project together. We're going to be doing the super simple diamond dishcloth pattern written up for us by my friend Louise of Wildflower Wool. And once again, Louise, a great big thank you from me to you for doing this. And also another big thank you to my friend Adrian, third member of our Fibre Friends podcast, who also helped Louise edit the pattern with fresh eyes. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm starting a new project is I like to read through the entire pattern so that I have an idea of what's ahead of me, whether there's anything that I need to still figure out how to do, or just to be feeling like I'm fully prepared. So I thought we'd go over it together today, and then we're going to cast on. We're going to start our design, our pattern. So our materials list, as we've discussed, we've got one 50-gram ball of dishcloth cotton, 100% cotton. Now there's a few different name brands there that are very nice. There's also, I know that there's a cotton bamboo blend that lots of dishcloth knitters also really like. So if you have seen that in the store and you really like the hand feel of that, it's also a great option. Cotton itself has some tendencies that I'm going to talk about right now that lead itself to wanting to make sure that you not knit too tightly. As you can see, I've got my cotton ready to go here, and cotton has almost no stretch at all. As you can see, I'm tugging on both ends and it is not going anywhere. Whereas wool is quite elastic. And so if I hold it gently and I stretch, it's got quite a lot more give to it. Whereas cotton really has no give. And so you're going to find probably that the cotton is going to feel a little tighter on your needles. Slipping those stitches, slipping the needle in to make the new stitches, the cotton is probably going to feel a little tighter. It might take you a few minutes to get used to knitting with cotton versus wool. However, it makes an awfully nice washcloth. So here we go. Okay, now the next section here is called gauge. Now, Louise says it's not critical for this project, but I prefer knitting my dishcloths tight to prevent excessive stretching. So, well, now I've just said don't knit too tightly, and Louise says she likes to knit them tight. Again, her idea of tight and my idea of tight are probably around the same thing, but our tight is probably looser than a new knitter's tight, if that makes sense to you. You want to be able to still get your needle tip in and not have to, require a lot of force in order to knit. This should be, fun, not a workout. So now, another word about gauge. We are going to learn how to do a gauge swatch. It is, of course, this is a washcloth. It doesn't matter whether yours is smaller than mine or mine is bigger than, the person down the streets. It's a washcloth. It doesn't matter. But when it comes to making a hat, that all of a sudden is going to become very important because I like a looser hat. I have a lot of hair and a really big head. So I don't like a small sized hat. I like a big hat that covers my hair and covers my ears. So the hat that I make, I would probably want to make a slightly bigger hat than the hat that I would make for my daughter, who has a slightly smaller head. Makes sense, right? So we need to learn how to do gauge, how to get gauge. And so I'm going to be doing a video with Adrian and Louise most likely next week as part of the hat series that we're going to be starting next. I am going to have a little bit of time off in between the dishcloth and the hat, maybe a week before we start the hat tutorials. So feel free to make a few more dishcloths while you wait. But there's lots of fun and exciting things coming down the line. So that's all about gauge. Okay, now we've got an abbreviations list here. K for knit, ST for stitches, garter stitch. We've already talked about what garter stitch is. You know what that is. That's when you knit every single row. K2 tog. Knit 2 stitches together. This is our decrease. We did not talk about that yet, so that is new. However, it is exactly what it sounds like. You know how to knit 1 stitch. So instead of knitting 1 stitch, you knit 2 stitches together. But I'm going to show you how to do that in just a few minutes. KFB, that's our increase, and we know how to do that. Okay? So then we get into the meat and potatoes of the pattern. We cast on 3 stitches. Louise prefers the long tail cast on, but any cast on will do. Fortunately for you, we all know how to do the long tail cast on. Row 1, knit 1, and then knit front back in the next stitch, knit to the end of the row. Repeat row 1 until you have 40 stitches or a number you are happy with. This is a dishcloth. If you end up with a few more stitches, that's still okay. Then when we have 40 stitches on our needle, you are then going to knit 3 rows back and forth without the increase. So just plain knitting. This creates a nice corner, so it's not too pointy at the corner. You're going to add a couple of rows so that it makes a nice rounded corner instead to the cloth. Then row 2, so this is after the middle part of our dishcloth, knit 1 and then knit 2 together. Knit to the end of the row. Knit 2 together is our decrease. So now you can see we have gotten past the middle of our dishcloth, and now we are starting to make it smaller. Repeat row 2 until you have 4 stitches left on your needle. When you have those 4 stitches left on your needle, you're going to knit 2 together and then knit the last 2 stitches together. And then you've gone from 4 stitches to having 2 stitches on your needle. Now the last instruction is about the cast off. Cast off, is it in the screen there? Yeah. Cast off 1 stitch using the left needle tip. Lift the back stitch up and over the front stitch and let it drop off the needle. Cut the yarn, pull tail through the first stitch, snug it up tight, and weave in the ends. Okay, so there's a few things here that we haven't talked about yet. We haven't talked about the cast off, and we haven't talked about how to deal with that very last stitch or how to weave in our ends. So these instructions here, I'm going to be putting up one more short little tutorial video on these ending bits, probably at some point this weekend. Because if you're anything like me, you're going to be super excited and you're going to want to get going right away. So I'll try to have it up fairly quickly for you in case you're really quick and you get to the end. The only other thing that we have to do together is the knit 2 together. So I will demonstrate that in just a minute. Okay, so then the rest of it here is the coaster. So let's get started. Okay, here we go. We're ready to cast on. I have my needle. I've got the end of my yarn. Now, because I am only casting on 3 stitches, I do not need a very long tail. In fact, I can use a very short tail. It's only going to be 3 stitches. So I've got my cast on ready to go. Here we go. We all know how to do this now. With just one simple step, I already have 2 stitches on my needle. I only need 3. So there's my 3rd. Just like that, my cast on is done and I'm ready to start. Turn my needle around. Okay, row 1. Knit 1 stitch. Next is knit front back. Oops, got my tail stuck in there. Knit front back, front, and there's my back. So I've done my increase now for that row, and then the rest of the instructions say knit to the end of the row. Well, I've only got 1 stitch, so I'll knit that last stitch, and that's it. That's my first row. It's done. Now you can see that little stitch there on the end is a little bit loose, but that's okay, because it's going to just snug right up into the next stitch when I turn the row around. So I'm going to turn my needle around, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing going back the other way. You just repeat that original instruction all the way up. Knit the first stitch, knit front, back. There's my increase done, and then knit to the end of the row. Done. Okay, turn it around. And then you do the same thing each and every time. Knit one, knit front back. Sounds like there's some excitement going on outside. Knit to the end of the row. 1, 2, 3. And already, as you can see, my knitting is growing. I'm going to do one more row. These are rather addictive to knit. Knit the first stitch, knit front, back, there's my increase, knit to the end of the row. Now the one thing that we haven't talked about yet is fixing mistakes. Dropping a stitch in garter stitch requires a slightly different fix than dropping a stitch in stockinette. And so there's a couple of different ways to handle it. Some people will put in what is called a lifeline as they're knitting. You can use dental floss or another piece of yarn, you know, while you go. And all you need to do is thread that dental floss or yarn on a needle, and you simply thread it through the top layer of stitches when you have completed a row that is correct. And then you can keep knitting. Say maybe you knit another 5 rows, and then if you discover that you've made a mistake in those last 5 rows, you can take your project off the needle, very carefully unwrap the stitches that are wrong, and then pick up the live stitches that are being held on that waste yarn, or your lifeline as it were. So while you're learning, a lifeline every 5 rows might be a good idea, and it might save you from having to start the project all over again if you sort of get muddled up and really can't find a solution for it. I do know that I am going to put out some videos on how to fix mistakes. I am going to need Louise's help with that because she's very good at it. And I know Adrienne also usually has a few tricks up her sleeve. She has a special little tool. So I'm going to ask her to find it, and I can't at the moment remember the name of it, but it's a funny little, it looks like a crochet hook, and she uses that to help her fix mistakes. So we'll do some work on that in the weeks ahead to come. So for now, keep it slow and steady, use a lifeline, and if all else fails and you come to disaster, send me a message, send me a picture, and I'll see if we can help you out sooner rather than later. Okay? But really, a lifeline every 5, even less. Once you get on to 25, 30 stitches, if you don't want to knit half of your dishcloth all over again, put in a lifeline and use it. I am terrible at not taking my own advice, and I am frequently ripping out several rows and not having lifelines. So let that be a lesson to you. Okay, so I think we're pretty much ready to go. You now know everything that you have to do, how to read your pattern, how to get to the middle. The only thing I haven't shown you yet is the knit 2 together, the K2 tog. So I'm going to pretend that my dishcloth is ready to be starting the decreases, and I'm just going to show you how I would go about it going back the other way. So the first stitch is a knit stitch, just like when we're doing the increases, excuse me. So the first stitch is a knit stitch. The next stitch is a knit 2 together. So the needle tip comes to the left of 2 legs to the next 2 stitches, and then you tuck the needle tip through both of those stitches, pretending they were 1. So you can see there's the back. I have 2 stitches there. The metal parts of my needle tips are touching at all times. My needle is through both stitches. And then you simply wrap and knit as normal, thereby turning 2 stitches into 1. And you've done a decrease. And that's it. That's all there is to it. It's very, very easy. That's it for today. I hope that you have so much fun knitting your project. These really are so quick once you get the hang of it, and such useful little things to have around the house. And, you know, a really, really nice thank you gift, or showing up with a hostess gift when you've been invited for lunch or a party. A few of these special handmade dishcloths wrapped up with a really beautiful bar of soap. That's a pretty nice gift. So anyways, enjoy. If you have any questions, leave me a comment below. And I'm super excited to start seeing some finished dishcloths in my Instagram feed. Can't wait, guys. Happy knitting. Gerald, I hope it's going well. I can't wait to see your dishcloth. I'll check in this weekend with the video on how to finish it off and weave in ends. Take care, guys. See you later.